Welcome back to Unfiltered, Unspoken. And we're gonna keep giving it to you over and
Yeah.
over again. We have another wonderful, phenomenal life experience that we're gonna share with you. We want to welcome Shaun Banks. He's going to talk about his childhood traumas of domestic violence, gang violence, bullying, and more, and how he went from the trauma piece to the recovery piece and all the wonderful things that he's doing. So I'm going to bring Sean up, and then you know how we're going to do it. Sid is going to kick off the first question, and then we're going to go from there. Welcome, Sean.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you.
We still here. Go ahead.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
the
because I
problem.
was
Go
sure.
ahead.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be on the show and just ready to have a great time with y'all, man. Just, be able to share as much as I can to be able to benefit the listener. So let's do it.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna jump right into it. Just based on some of the background we know about you here, you experienced some trauma in your childhood. So
Sure.
what was your first, kind of taste of a bad experience? How did that occur, and how old were you?
From as far as an abuse place,
Yes, or any, anything negative that it may be in the household.
uh, you know, the first thing, as far as from an abuse perspective, the first thing was just being fatherless. That was the first thing, and that was because it's more of a mental impact than anything else. Growing up, my dad wasn't there. My dad, when I was a child, was a very wealthy man, and that impacted my life because it caused me to fight a lot at school. I was angry. I was angry because of not having a dad there, trying to figure out and understand why my mother struggled so much as a single mom, trying to raise my sister and I in the hood. And so I lashed out, and so I would fight all the time. I mean, and then growing up, we were latchkey kids, right? So we were bused out, to other communities because so we could try to get a good education. And during that time, I mean, there's a lot of racism in the schools, and so we fought all the time. But it was hard for me to deal with my own inner struggles of not having a father, and so that was the first kind of mental abuse. And I know people say, well, that's not really abuse, but it starts there, right? It starts with the mental impacts and the things that happen, especially dealing with youth. We're dealing with our own trauma. And so that neglect from my father, and that what I felt he kind of turned his back on me as a child made me aggressive towards other people. And so that was the first taste of abuse, I would say that I experienced personally. As I got older, I mean, there were other more traumatic things that I saw to my aunts. Initially, is where it started. I had an aunt that was brutally beaten by her husband, to the point where they had to take a piece of her brain out because of the abuse that she experienced. And I was probably about six when I heard about that, and I remember my mother just freaking out about it. And then, she went and saw her in the hospital, and some things happened while she was in the hospital. And then she got out, and then he did it again. And I mean, twice she was almost beaten to near death. And so, just as a child and experienced that, and then just other situations in my life with relatives that were experiencing the same things had an impact on me.
Wow, that's neat. So,
Yeah.
did your aunt's abuse create the behavioral issues that would begin? And it sounds like from the behavioral issues, were you a
Mhm.
bully or did you get bullied?
I was angry. I wouldn't say that I was a bully. I would say that I fought a lot. I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, I grew up, late '80s, early '90s. I mean, really didn't have really wasn't a bully. It was like we were dealing with racism, so we would fight kids. We would fight, particularly kids of other races, because we were angry. I mean, we wanted Jordans. They had Jordans on their feet, right? And then the all the girls were like them because they had all the stuff, and we didn't have anything, but we looked like the girls. We like y'all don't even want to holler at us. Y'all want to holler at them, and they were coming from a different social economic place than we were. Right. And so that created a lot of anger in me. And so they would say something to me, cross or something, or they would, call us names, which we would get called a lot, and then they would lie about it and say they didn't do it. But we fight. We fight all the time. And so in today's sense, yeah, I probably would have been considered a bully. I for sure would have been considered a bully the way that they label bullying now. But it was just the culmination of the abuse that I was dealing with from not having a dad. Um, what I was dealing with in my community as a young child, realizing what it was like before crack hit and what it was like after crack hit. Hearing about my aunts, I mean, one aunt getting beaten, another one getting strung out on drugs, right, and crack and the impacts of that, and then the men in their life that were manipulating them and using them to get crack and all that. I mean, so dealing with all that as a child, it was very hard, and it wasn't just me; it was my cousins as well.
So what did it for you? What did that turn into? What did seeing that with your relatives, your environment,
Mhm.
issues at school? How did that materialize into the trajectory of how you were going?
Uh, Initially, my trajectory was pretty bad, actually, right? Because I was getting in trouble at school a lot, and I was seeing violence. So I mean, where I grew up as a kid, I mean, I lived my first half of my life in Seattle, and so anytime I talk about Seattle, people are like, "Man, first of all, there's black people in Seattle." And I'm like, "Yeah, there's a lot of black people in Seattle," and then it's like, "Man, is there like they got gangs in Seattle?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they got a lot of gangs in Seattle because you had all the gangs coming from Denver." Coming from California, I mean, they would come up to, it was spreading, right? It was coming from Chicago, Denver, California. They go up to Seattle, and then you had black gangs, you had Asian gangs, right? Like Filipino gangs, you had Samoan gangs, you had Hispanic gangs. I mean, there's all because Seattle's a melting pot. You had all kind of gangs, and so for me, my trajectory was pretty much a statistical young black child, a young black male. In a lot of ways that we see young black men in the hood today, that my what was supposed to happen to me was either be dead or jail based on my environment, based on the fact that I didn't have a father that was present physically all the time, based on the fact that we were in a low socioeconomic status, based on the fact that there was crack and stuff going on. I mean, there were times that I was shot at as a kid, and I'm like 9, 10 years old. They where I lived at was where the BGDs were, right? The Black Gangster Disciples. That was the hood that I was in. Now I wasn't banging, but if that's the hood you in, that's who you are, right? And so if the Crips came around the corner, right, because the BGDs are right here, the Crips is down the street, the Bloods is right over here. So systematically, you're gonna fight. If you're 2 or 3 blocks away, you got to get through the Blood neighborhood to get to school. You got to go through the Crip neighborhood to get to the grocery store, right? You got to come through the BGD neighborhood to get over to the basketball court. So everybody's gonna fight, and so it had a tremendous impact on my life and a lot of stress, right? So we talk about young black kids having PTSD. It's real, because I mean, there was times I was afraid to go to sleep because there was so much gun violence. We sleeping and you hearing shots all the time in America.
Wow. So
Yeah.
going through that situation, how did you
Mhm.
avoid not becoming a gang member? Because I could almost imagine that you probably many tried to recruit you, and then I have a
Absolutely.
fallback. Your dad being there, I mean, did you create anger towards him? Because it sounded like he could have saved you from the
Mhm.
environment that you were in.
Absolutely. So the first of all, the right with gangs and just the way it works, the the gang members in any hood, but particularly I'll speak from my own situation in our hood. We knew them all, and they were all cool. They were like your big brothers. Wasn't nobody gonna mess with you if you told them that you knew Tim, or had cousins that were Crips, or wasn't nobody gonna mess with you. So it's family, right? Everybody's taking care of you. So you're not necessarily afraid like people would think that you are. It's just the fact that the violence is so crazy that you're dealing with it, and you almost become immune in a lot of ways. But for me, the fact that my parents didn't get along, uh, but my father would make an effort to come around. He would show me different things in life. As a matter of fact, one of the things that changed my life was a serious, excuse my language, a serious ass whooping that I got from my dad from getting in trouble at school. That completely just changed my life and it made me rethink if I wanted to keep getting in trouble. But it was just you know, it was just very impactful, and it was very hard. But they had, for example, with BGDs, you had like the the guys that were like grown men, right? Then you had guys that were like younger teenagers. That was a gang. I think they were like the OSCs, and then you had like the baby G's, right? And so where we were, you was like baby G, so you was being groomed to be right to just following that path. And so since there was no dad in the house, right, and these guys are cool and they giving you candy or they barbecue and they give you something to eat, and then all of a sudden it turns into giving you money to go over here and do this, and then you get that a pair of J's. You just get groomed in that lifestyle, so you don't even realize what you're doing is really wrong. You may know it, but these are the people that's taking care of you. That's your family, right? So that's the only family you got. Nobody's telling you any different. So you follow that path.
Now, what you were seeing as far as the violence, and
Yeah.
especially violence towards women,
Uh-huh.
how did that materialize on you? Did that make you sympathetic in your relationships, or did that make you what you know and what you saw?
It made me sympathetic. It made me very sympathetic in my life because I saw, let me see here, one, two, three, four uh, women in my family for sure that I know were dealing with just either direct domestic violence situations or the impacts of right just drug abuse, right, or drug use. And so for me, it made me not want to be that kind of man. It pushed me in a different direction, and I was fortunate that it pushed me in that direction where I didn't follow suit. I was very angry and hurt by the fact that my dad didn't live with me because I was like, well, how come he doesn't love me? Right. And it wasn't that he didn't love me. I didn't understand that. But I didn't understand why he just wouldn't stay there and just do whatever it takes to be there. And so I wanted to be something different. I wanted to do something different because of that. And then I had a very strong willed mother. My mother is the reason why we got out of the hood. My mother is the reason why we were able to come out of being in the projects and being able to see other things. It was my mother that pulled us out of Seattle and brought us to Atlanta. It was my mother that showed me a lot of things that allowed me to build a dream. And so to this day, I take care of my mother in my businesses and everything that I do because it was my mother that, in spite of the hurt that she was dealing with, got up and was like, nah, we're going to make something happen. So my mother was started a house cleaning service out of the projects, and she was going cleaning houses, and everybody would laugh at her for doing it, like all the time. They're like, "Man, you a maid? Like, nobody do that." And I'll never forget one time her van got broken into, and the crackhead stole like her Kirby vacuum, all her cleaning supplies, and all this stuff. And she was devastated. And so one of the OGs in the hood, a big time dope dealer, he was like, "Yo, let me drive your van around for a couple of days." He was like, "I guarantee you, they see me riding around in this van, nobody will break it. You can leave your car doors unlocked and won't nobody touch your van again." She gave him the keys. He did it. From then on else, we didn't have no problems. And that allowed her to build and get free. Because if not, they were just going to keep stealing it. They was going to keep taking it. Wasn't nobody to protect her. So, um, it made me force myself to become a better man. And my mother wasn't going to have it any other kind of way.
Okay. So the move from Seattle to Georgia, now you did even more distance from your dad.
Mhm.
Did the relationship
Yeah.
with your dad get better once you moved, or was it more of a strain on you?
It got better. We talked on a regular basis. Well, I wouldn't say on a regular basis. We talked maybe, well, we weren't really weren't regular. We talk on a regular basis now. At that time, maybe once every 6 months, once a quarter. Maybe I'd see him once a year during the summertime. And that was tough. And what really changed once we got to Atlanta from an abuse standpoint, right? What impacted us was the death of my aunt and my cousin, and that's what really changed our life, right? We got from Seattle, got to Atlanta, and then my aunt and cousin were murdered in a domestic violence situation where my uncle was jealous. Ultimately, thought that she was trying to leave him for another man, and she had told him that she wasn't, that she was just coming down to my sister's wedding. And she came down to the wedding on that Saturday, and he flew back up that Sunday, and he stabbed him to death. and that rocked our world, just our whole family, right? That so it wasn't something where, you know, it wasn't my mom and my dad directly where it was like every day I was seeing it, right? It was dealing with the distance and the pain, seeing what happened to my other aunts, and then thinking that we had got away from that, and then all of a sudden hearing about my aunt and my cousin being viciously murdered, because he not only did he murdered them, and then he left their bodies, and nobody could find them, and that's what really impacted us and just put us in a dark space for a minute.
Wow, that's terrible.
I know y'all. I know y'all
Definitely.
weren't asking about that part.
No,
No,
we
it's
would have got
fine
around
because
to it. Yeah,
you know what?
we would
You
have got
know
Yeah,
what?
around
I
to it.
yeah,
sit here. I sit here honestly, and I
yeah,
just I'm always thankful and blessful. I'm blessed that I'm able to be here to hear you say him stabbed, her, and I was stabbed 6 times. So I'm just, it
yeah,
makes you as a survivor. It just makes you,
yeah,
thankful. So
yeah, yeah. I mean, because he stabbed her, and he stabbed my cousin. My cousin was 9, right? I mean, he was a little boy, and so it was that part for us where it was just like, you know, you never understand why a man. Well, like, okay, you figure, you understand adults don't get along, right? An emotional man does something to his wife, right, out of anger or whatever. But the kid, man, you know what I mean? Like, this little boy was 9 years old. He was a straight A student. He loved to read. Why did you do that to him? What did he do, right? That he deserved that. And so that was what, for me, uh, personally, is what threw me into a spiral. And I was in high school, right? I was a year from graduating from high school, and doing well in school. And that was, as a young adult at that age, probably the hardest thing that I had to deal with at that time, was trying to understand that and figuring out how I was going to be able to press through that, because that was just, I had just saw him. That was my little cousin. I remember when he was born, I was laying in my mom's lap at the hospital when he was born. Like, I watched him grow up, you know what I'm saying? And it's like all of a sudden he's gone, and I didn't understand how to deal with that. Even today, I mean, I got 2 boys, right? And I think about my sons, and I'm like, man, like, so that it still, makes my stomach hurt when I even think about that.
did they lock him up? Is he still in jail?
So let me tell you that. So their bodies were left, and my other aunt, uh, who uh, went to, well, first she was calling, trying to figure out where they were, because they had got back to Seattle and no one had heard from them for days. And all of a sudden, over a week had passed and no one had heard from them. So my aunt was concerned. She called my mom and was like, I'm gonna go and do a check, like, go by their apartment and see what's going on. They went, told the people they're doing a wellness check. The police came, they kicked open the door, or they opened the door, and as soon as they opened the door, the smell hit them, right? And so they knew what had happened, and their bodies were decomposed, laying in the kitchen. And so, of course, the family was frantic. It had been weeks after that. I was trying to pull money together to be able to have a funeral. And so the whole family flew up there uh, right around Christmas time. And so we're all in the house, and the adults had left, and just the kids were at the house. And he called, and my sister answered the phone, and my sister was like, Sean, he's on the phone. So I was like, all right, well, give me the phone, because she couldn't talk to him. He said, hey, what's going on, Sean? I said, hey, what's going on? He said, well, hey, what you guys in town for? I said, well, we're all coming here for Christmas, and we're trying to find our aunt and our cousin, and I said the names, and we can't find them. He said, well, had you gone by the apartment to look for them? And we are like, nah. He said, well, you should go by there and look for them. They're probably there. And so I'm like, okay. And it was nothing but the grace of God that I was even able to compose myself. And I said, well, how you doing? And he said, man, I got a lot going on in my life. And I said, really? He said, yeah, I'm just dealing with a lot right now. And I said, oh, man. I said, well, where are you? Because he was on the run. He said, I'm at such and such hospital. I said, all right. I said, well, hey, Unc, it's going to be all right. Everything's going to be all right. He said, all right, I love you. And then got off the phone. I called the detective because we had the number to the detective because he was on the loose, so everybody was scared about that. I told the detectives where they were. They went and picked him up. He ended up doing life in prison. He died uh, maybe 3 months ago.
Jesus,
Yeah,
that's
maybe 3 months
heavy.
ago. That's how he, yeah, that's how he got sent to jail. He ended up doing life in prison. They wanted to give him the chair. My mother didn't want him to have the chair. She didn't she didn't want him to be murdered. She said, "No, let him sit there." And that's where he sat. And they would let her know if he was ever moved. I think he was moved maybe once or twice or something that we knew about, maybe more. I don't know. But he sat there, like I said, maybe a couple months ago. She got a letter in the mail that said that he had died, and he just died. But yeah, that's where he was, and that's how he got found. I mean, his guilt got him,
Mm.
um, and they went and picked him up, and that was hard. I mean, that was nothing but the grace of God that I was even able to do it because it wasn't me as a kid. I mean, how you deal with somebody who done killed your aunt calling you, you know. So, but that's how that happened.
Gosh.
Yeah,
I do want to ask, just in reference to, you're mentioning your aunts and things that they went through and things like that. Since it was more than once, and it seems like more than one aunt,
yeah.
did your mother and her family or her siblings go through things? Have she ever talked to anything about her going through trauma, or her sisters, as to how they kept finding themselves in those type of situations or drawn to those type of men?
Um, I think that a lot of what they, just and of course try to speak for them. Um, did they deal with a lot of things after that? Yeah. I think that it was very challenging for when I think about just the women in my life, like my aunts, and just them recovering. I think from those situations where there was, um, you know, the abuse or the impacts of drug abuse. And so when I talk about the impacts of drug abuse, just the impacts of crack, right? And so anybody who knows somebody that's dealt with crack before, everybody knows the impacts of that, right? How it affects your health, how it affects how you're able to raise your children, right? How it affects, because a crackhead. I hate to say it like that, but a crackhead, anybody who knows has a family member that's a crackhead knows what time it is and knows what people go through when they're on crack. Whether so we're stealing from the family, or not being able to take care of the children, or not being able to provide for the children. So the impact is cyclical, right? It's generational. So it doesn't necessarily just affect the adult or the user or the abuser. It affects their children, and it affects their children's children, because somebody that's addicted to drugs or that's been abused, right? And for example, someone's been abused to the point to where part of their brain has been taken out. There's some things missing, right? And so because there's some things missing, there's some there's some emotions that may be missing too, on how to properly nurture and care for your child. And so then that child doesn't get that nurturing, once loving, and the mother that felt that she was beautiful and everything. Now she doesn't think she's anything. She's trying to build herself up, and now she's angry because she doesn't have the man she has. She's stuck with this kid. Why did this happen to me? It's my fault. They're dealing with the guilt and the depression and dealing with all that stuff wrapped in one, and then you still got cook, and you still got to take that kid to school, and you still got to love them, and you don't have nothing else to give because you're trying to put yourself together, and you still got to love this child, or these 4 or 5 children, or these 2 or 3, or you doing crack, or or heroin, and you need to stop, but you addicted. But then tomorrow morning, you got to teach a parent conference, and you got to get to that. You're not getting to that conference. So they're not getting the education. So now they can't read. And now they can't go to school. And now they can't get a job. So now they're going to start doing what they got to do to make money. And then the cycle continues. So I think that is greater than just the impact on them. I think that it's more of what happens to their children and the generations going down the line. That is the effects of abuse, and just numbers and statistics talk about the cycle of abuse, and how when children or when people are abused and when women are abused, they end up abusing their children, right? And not always, but in many cases, and then the kids end up doing it, and so it just keeps going on, right? A lot of times, your molesters have been molested, your rapers have had something happen traumatic in their life. It's a cycle of abuse, and so it's greater than just the one person. It ends up being a negative seed that kind of spreads and infects if you don't do something about it to get the help to keep it from doing that.
Agreed. Agreed. I have a your uncle was that your cousin's dad? And then I also want to know mentally, did you get help mentally? Like what did you go through mentally after? I mean, your aunt passed, then he's pretty much told you and indirectly confessed it. I mean,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So that was my cousin's dad. So it was my aunt, right? It was my mother's sister. That was murdered, right?
And
So
your
it was her
uncle,
husband.
was that your little cousin's dad that murdered him?
Yes, 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 yeah. He murdered his own son, which was the thing. It was like that's what I'm saying. Like how you murder your own child, right? Which is why they want to. That's why they want to. With a capital punishment or whatever, gas them or shock them or whatever they want to do. I don't know, shooting line, whatever they want to do. But that was part of the reason, was because it was his own child, right? Like, what makes you, and it's almost bad, right? It's like, okay, we can understand the woman. It's almost how they were saying, but this kid, right? Like, why'd you do that? But yeah, that's what made it so bad. It was his father. And his father and his namesake, right? He was his junior and it was his only child. So that's what made it very, very painful. Um, and for me, it's interesting. It's amazing how God works. Because at that time when that happened, I got very involved in music. I've been involved in music and writing songs and stuff since I was in middle school. And my mother was at a Sam's or a BJ's or something, and she met this record producer, and she told him like, yeah, my son is into music. He likes to write songs, blah blah blah. And he told her, all right, cool, have him come by the studio. So I started going by the studio, and I started interning. I started interning for a guy named Sean Hall and a guy named Tricky Stewart, and it's called Red Zone. And Tricky Stewart actually is a guy that produced a lot of songs, but one he produced for the Braxtons. He produced Umbrella with Rihanna, and I started interning with those guys. And my mom, because of what had happened and just dealing with that trauma, would allow me to go to the studio at night. The stipulation was that I had to continue to get great grades because she could not afford college. And so that was the agreement. I said, "Ma, I give you my word. I will continue to get great grades in school. If you would let me go follow my dream." She said, agreed. So like a Tuesday night, I would get done with school. I would have maybe baseball practice, or I would go to debate practice or something like that. And then I would catch the bus from one side of town all the way over to Red Zone, and I would record with them. My nickname was Big Tom, and they'd be like, "Big Tom's here, blah 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 blah," and I'd be in there, and I was a teenager, and I was recording and writing songs and listening to them till till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I would go pick up food and all that stuff, and that was part of the therapy for me. And then I would get home at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I would go to bed. I have to get up and I have to go to school. And I was doing this 16, 17, 15 years old. And then what happened is Sean uh, he went to church and got saved. And then he said, I went to go on intern with him, go like, hey man, let's go do some work. He said, I tell you what, my life has changed. He said, so the only way I'm going to let you come to the studio with me is that once a week you got to start going to church. You got to come with me to church. And so I want to be in the studio. So I was like, all right, whatever, like, let's do it. So then I started going to church and I started sitting and I started learning about the word and how to be able to use the word to heal my life and how to be able to get my life in a different place. And that's what saved me.
That's great. That's great. You
Yeah.
found a release, and I think
Yeah.
I am familiar with that production team. I think probably from B2K days, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've heard of
Yeah.
him.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awesome. So are you still based in like Atlanta now, or did you, move back to Washington? Where did you kind of place your roots after? Where have you found the most healing and I guess where you feel most comfortable now?
Man, Atlanta's home for me. Atlanta's home. I miss the water. Seattle, I go back. I still have family there. But Seattle, but Atlanta is my home. I mean, that's right. I mean, ended up finishing, you know, grade school here. I went to college at the University of Alabama, and then came back to Atlanta. But yeah, Atlanta's my home.
That's awesome. And
Yeah,
with that, how is, everyone that's still around, how's everyone, in the family dealing now? How do you guys, overcome? Is everyone still close? How's everything going with you guys?
the family's doing very well. I mean, my family members, especially like the immediate family members that were impacted by that, are doing very well. I mean, of course, there's some of us that got challenges, but then that's any family, that's anybody. But overall, our family's doing very well. I mean, my cousins and stuff, moved on to have very successful careers, doing various things. My aunts, the ones that are still alive, are doing very well and very happy, and are able to enjoy a full life, which is a blessing. And everybody's doing very well. It's allowed, one of the things that came out of it um, was I was so determined to do something about what had happened to them that it created the things that I do now and spurred other things for me to do. So, which allows for my other family members, those that work with me, to be able to, reap the harvest of that and be able to, take care of their families.
Beautiful. So, since we're there, what was the
Yeah,
start? Because you're doing a lot of wonderful things in the
yeah,
community, and you're
yeah,
really engaged with the youth. And we're
yeah.
going to run, this will be running some of your information. So, can you tell us where you started the journey to do positive things in the community? Just elaborate a little bit on that.
Sure. So initially, I never wanted to work with youth. I could stand kids, man. I didn't have any passion to work with kids. And I mean, maybe it was partially because, just as a kid, I mean, I was talked about so bad for, you know, having like, not the name brand shoes and all that, and just being we were poor, right? So we would talk. So the kids were mean to me. So as an adult, I think a lot of that lingered. I didn't really realize that it did. Just the impact of fighting so much because I was talked about as a kid so bad, and so that's part of things. One of the things that lingered with me. But from that, um, I was able to create. I Am Defense Institute was where it started. And the Armed Defense Institute is a self defense program for women and children to teach them how to defend themselves. As a kid, my mom put me in martial arts to keep me from getting in trouble, to keep me from being involved in gangs. And so I had that skill, and I just fell in love with martial arts as a kid and stuck with it. And so I had always wanted to do something in my aunt and cousin's honor. And that was the first thing I did. And pretty much where that came from was I was on post serving at the church, and they would always put me over where the youth were, and I was like, man, I don't want to be over here. I want to be, on a security detail or something more close to, where the action was, so to speak, to be able to protect the people that were, speaking. And they would always put me over there and they said, hey, listen, if these people coming to get this message, if they're concerned about the safety of their kids or the development of their kids, they're not going to be able to listen. They're going to be distracted. And so I understood it, but I didn't like it. The market changed. I was in real estate at the time, and I didn't love it. It was just a way to make great money. I was good at it. I was good at sales. So that was just what I did. And I was definitely determined to do something else besides waiting tables after I left Alabama. I was like, this ain't it right here. This boy, wait a minute. Something got to be better, right? Some of those highs and lows of life. And so anyway, I got into that, and a buddy of mine said, hey, look, we can open up a martial arts program. We did it. Then he went to the movie industry. He wanted to do like be a stunt double and do things for entertainers in Atlanta, since it was a growing movie industry, right? And I had this thing, and I said, okay, well, what am I going to do with it? And, I was like, hey, we're going to open up this program. We opened up I Am Defense, and that's where it started, teaching women and children how to defend themselves. So I felt like maybe if my aunt and my cousin had knew how to defend themselves, and my cousin maybe knew to hide or to go do something, or my aunt could have, I don't know, like kicked him in the nuts or like snatched his ear off or something, maybe she could have defended herself and got away. So I want to teach that to women, so that if they're in a situation my aunt gets in, that they can, help themselves, save themselves and their children, and be able to live a healthy life. And that's where it started for me.
That's wonderful. And what year did you start that?
Uh, it started. Let's see, where am I now? See, so 2007. About 2007 is when that part started, and been rolling with it ever since. Prior to that, I would, work with Emory at the Atlanta Urban Debate League. I would do stuff there. I was always kind of in this area where we were working or developing youth. Prior to that, but in 2007, I was able to, start that. 2011, I was able to retire from my job at the time. I hated that job. I was able to leave from there, and just and take off with everything that God had inside of me, to be able to share with the world.
Awesome.
I was
And
gonna say,
is there, I was gonna say, is there any like
Huh?
other subsidiaries that have like branched off since it's one idea? Like what else do you have, going on?
Absolutely. So from I Am Defense, so I started realizing that teaching martial arts, I never wanted to do that. I wanted to be on the business side. But what I found, I had a big personal development background from business. I started when I was in college, and realized that youth were lacking personal development. They didn't have the focus, the skills, the discipline, the self confidence. And martial arts was great for that, but they needed more. They needed more personal development on a greater level than what martial arts was able to provide, even though martial arts is excellent for it. So I opened up Camp Warrior King, which is a summer camp designed to expose kids to extracurricular activities they normally wouldn't experience during the school year. Camp Warrior King will be 10 years old this year. And we do everything. We teach them hiking. We teach them how to shoot, how to fish, how to hunt. We take them spelunking. We do canoeing. We do kayaking. We have a celebrity basketball game. We have youth conferences. Anything that these kids want to do, we get with them for about 10 weeks, and we do that. From Camp Warrior King, we realize that, okay, these kids need even more. They need more personal development. They need the skills. They need the self-efficacy. They need the confidence. How do we do that? How do they understand how to bounce back from a challenge? So we created You Can Have It All. You Can Have It All is a youth conference that we do all over to motivate children to go after their dreams. It started in Atlanta, and then it spread out to different cities. We've done international conferences. And from there, we said, okay, well, we can't get to all these kids. So how do we get kids around the globe to be motivated? Because motivation is a universal language, right? Every kid wants and deserves to be motivated, regardless of their skin color and regardless of where they are in the world. So we created You Can Have It All Kids magazine, which is an international magazine designed to motivate children, and they're motivated by their peers, right? Other kids that are writing articles and doing all kind of cool stuff and interactive, to get them motivated to go after their dreams. It's in multiple languages, so that children all over the world can be able to read it. Since then, I've written 3 books on youth development, on personal development, showing parents how to improve the performance of their kids to get them from one level to the next, whether that's socially at home, or in the classroom. I've written books for youth, showing them how to develop themselves. We have the success stacks, which build a child's self efficacy. They're cards and phrases, about 66 of them, that show them how to do that. You have Team Hot Sauce, which are cartoon characters that deal with personal development. They go all over the galaxy, fighting negatoid insects, as we call them, and helping people. So it just kind of just started branching and going all over the place like wildfire. And we're just getting started. We haven't even took out the slice of the pie yet. This is only the beginning, and I'm fired up about it.
Yeah, I love it. So I need to.
Yeah,
I'm gonna chat with you after because I want to know how we can take a field trip up there. Maybe bring some
let's
kids
do it.
up there, and we get
Yeah,
engaged. So yeah, I'm gonna chat with
let's
you
do
all
it.
about that. But I
I was
have a
gonna say
Yeah.
even like
question.
a little scholarship to go to your camp, something,
Yeah, look,
something like
Absolutely.
see,
that.
you gonna go
Let's
with
do
me?
it.
You gonna volunteer?
Come on.
You know what? I'm where he's at, where I don't know about kids just
We
yet.
know that's why I'm gonna get you
Yeah.
to volunteer. Look, Ken didn't know about the podcast either because she was
But
hesitant.
I,
Yeah.
look,
Now,
I'm behind
look
the
at you
scenes.
now.
I'm behind the scenes. Look, I'll make y'all
Okay,
whole game plan, itinerary, all of that.
look at you
Yeah.
now.
Look,
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a
Ain't it great?
question because this is
Yeah.
unfiltered, unspoken. So I want to know. You went
Yeah.
through all people making fun of you and
Yeah.
talking about you and the girls messing with you. And
Yeah.
look at you now. How many of
Yeah.
those females have like? Is that Sean?
Yeah.
yeah, they
I want
Yeah.
choking,
to know.
choking
Yeah.
on them
Yeah.
words.
Yeah. A lot.
Say
I
yeah.
get it.
What do you
Yeah.
tell them now? Do you
Yeah.
say you made fun of me? I don't want you. Like, how do you? I just
No,
want to know how do you address
I just I just kill them with a smile. Hey, how you doing?
well, you have a
Good to see
beautiful
you.
smile,
Yeah.
so that
Yeah.
might be
Hey, I just
even
yeah.
more intriguing.
That's how you do it. Yeah. They do that,
Exactly.
hey, and I just keep it pushing after that.
Yep.
We ain't got a lot to talk about no more.
So, as always, I want to ask though,
Yeah.
just to give the audience some advice because you went through
Yeah.
the childhood traumas and you went through a lot
Hmm.
from gun gang people gang banging around you, gun violence, domestic
Yeah.
situations. Uh,
Yeah.
you felt, I guess, neglect abuse from your dad as a child. You went through
Sure.
so many pieces of the trauma. I just
Sure.
want, can you give the audience some advice on some of the things that helped you to cope with what you're going through and strategies that you use now that just helps you to where you're at the level that you're at now?
Absolutely. So my number one piece of advice is um, my grandmother always told me to keep your hand in God's hand. And I respect everybody's belief and everybody's, because things are. I respect what everybody believes. For me, it was that it was anytime I fell on my back or fell on my face, it was that relationship for me with God that always helped, that one-on-one relationship, right? That inner man, that spirit man conversation that I would have with God, which is your own voice for me, and sometimes not your own voice. There I believe in a greater power, and that is what saved my life. There are so many instances in my life where I knew it was nobody but God, and I'm not at all like you know a perfect individual, right? Like I have my own flaws, whatever, like the next person. But for me, God is great in spite of all that. And so that was the thing for me primarily. The other thing was for people that are dealing, like, it's knowing what you want out of life, right? So, for example, if it's a woman who has dealt with abuse and trying to overcome that abuse, and you have children, right, and you're still dealing with the depression and the hurt from what happened in your past, a lot of what I had to do was turn that into fuel for my fire, right? You focus on, okay, I may not necessarily love myself as much as I should, but I love the hell out my kids, and I'm gonna do it for my kids, right? I'm gonna get up and fight for my children. I'm gonna get out the bed and I'm gonna brush my teeth. I'm gonna wash my face. I'm gonna take a bath. I'm gonna make my bed. I'm gonna present myself well for my children because I know I gotta do it. I'm gonna get out here and fight and create and have a better life for my kids. And it's that desire to do it for others that really gives you power. And that's what really gave me power as a person that wanted more out of life. I was very angry. I was pissed off at the fact of my circumstances, and I wanted to do something about it. And the thing is that sometimes if you can't get excited about something, it's like just get pissed off, be mad. Like, what the hell? Somebody done tried me like that. You done that to me. All right, cool. I'll show you. right? You're gonna eat them words. You're gonna see me set on fire, set this world on fire. You're gonna be like, man, I shouldn't have done that. And sometimes it just takes that to get you up and get you going. And then once you get going, man, it gets behind you and you ain't even thinking about it no more. The other thing is that to forgive yourself. You forgive the person that did it to you, not necessarily for them, but for yourself. And then you forgive yourself, most importantly, because you all you got. Hey, I forgive you for making them decisions. I forgive you for when you knew you should have left or you knew you should have went left when you went right. Hey, I forgive you for that. And that's okay. It's all right. I got a quote. I have a lot of affirmations. So you said, what kinds of things can people do? I have a lot of affirmations in my phone. I have like maybe 130, and I say them on a regular basis to the point where I just recorded it so that when I'm in the gym or I'm walking, I can just hear it. And it's my own voice saying positive things to myself. And one quote I really love that came to mind is forget your past mistakes, forget your past failures, forget everything that you did wrong. Only think about what you're going to do now and do it. Forget all the past stuff, man, and go forward and do it. And that's what has saved me from times where I have bad days now, right? I'm a human just like anybody else, man. You cut me, I bleed just like you. But I have bad days. But what saves me, number one, is my faith in God, and then me constantly pouring back into myself when my cup gets empty.
Those are great suggestions. Now,
Yeah,
my question is, for me, I'm a person, I can listen to success stories, all
yeah,
day. In my mind, I feel like, I
right,
might have a little bit of motivation or sound good, or I
yeah,
want that too. But
yeah,
I'm a person where my mind exhausts every part of me before just thinking about how to get there.
yeah.
So with your first business endeavor with the karate or martial arts, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
um how were you able like to go into that? What was kind of like your business plan? How did you get your capital? Like how pretty much like what were your steps as to making it happen as somebody who never really had anything? We
Yeah,
know it can be easy for people that have, come from money or
right,
even got just good credit. But
right,
for
right,
us that
right,
don't
right.
have nothing, don't know how to
Uh,
manage money. Like, how did you
yeah.
first get your feet planted to be able to do that and start branching off into the conglomerate that you have now?
That's an excellent question. And number one, and it starts with this, right? Every single time, it starts with the decision, right? And we hear that a lot, right? It's like, okay, that's yeah, it starts with a decision. Believe it, you can see it. Blah blah blah, right? But it really does. It starts with the decision. So first, it starts. Let me back it up. It starts with a vision, right? It starts with a vision. What does your life look like if you do XYZ? What do you want to do? And what does it look like when you do it? Right? That is the unseen realm, right? I see it in my mind's eye, but I don't see it here. What do I want to do? I see it here first. And then what I'm going to do with that vision, right? That download that I got is that I'm going to manifest it into the world. I'm going to force it to come out like the birth of a child. I'm going to force it to be manifest into reality. So first, it's getting that vision and then making a decision that you're going to make it happen. And the reason why that's important, right, is because when you say, hey, look, I'm going to do it, no matter what, then the one of my mentors, his name is George Halsey. George died years ago. I got a picture of him right here on my wall. And one of the things he said to me all the time was, is that when you make a decision, the way will present itself. And the man was a super multi-millionaire, one of the first black millionaires in the business that he was in, and his words were true. Another one that he said was meet hard times with a harder will. Meet hard times with a harder will. So when I started, I didn't have any capital. My credit was horrible. Where was I? I had lost my house. I was dealing with crazy depression because of some crazy chick that I was dating at the time and had to start from bounce back from that. My cousin was living with me that was in high school. I was trying to take care of him and myself. The market had changed and I was messed up. And it was like, I got to get up from there again. And I had been knocked down so many times prior to that. And I'm like, God, you got to be tripping, bro. Like, what's going on? Like, I'm your boy. Like, what's happening? So it was make a decision and the way will present itself. So my credit was bad. I had zero money in the bank. How did I get started? I was taking the money that I was getting from at that time when the market changed, selling houses and things had changed, right? So I lost my house. I had a choice. I could either move back in with my mother and live in my mother's basement, or I could move in with my sister and live in my sister's basement. I was like, okay, there's only so much lower I can go. I ain't going to my mama's house. I'm gonna go to my sister's. That ain't as bad as being in my mama's basement at 20 some odd years old. Let me go to my sister's basement, right? It's a little bit better. I can at least say like I'm renting a studio apartment, right? So I did that. And from there, I started saving my money, right? So all the girls was talking about me. Nobody want to date me. Then nobody want to holler at me because I'm living in my sister's basement, right? And so I started doing it little by little. I got my first school. My first school was 45 minutes away in one direction. Okay. I got a job when I was selling insurance, which I didn't want to do that. I was back going in the hood, running what's called a debit, going and picking up money from people, right? Picking up your grandmama's old school insurance. I was doing that, going through projects and all that. So you can imagine what that was like, doing that, having you, insurance man's the one that got all the money on them. So you moving quick, right? If not, you get robbed. My other school was about another hour in the opposite direction. I had got a job where I had the freedom to make my own schedule. I would go, I would run my debit. When I was done with my debit, I would go teach one school one day. I would go back later the afternoon, teach the other school. And I was doing that 6 days a week. And I was running that. And I started building schools in between there. And I started building little by little, little by little. I had a letter in my bathroom. My gas was cut off. I was getting ready to get evicted from this place when I started the camp. I was behind on my bills. I was driving cars. I was doing security. I was doing whatever hustle I could because I had made a decision that I don't give a damn what happens. I'm gonna make it, and that's where it started. And so when you make a decision, the ways will present itself. Um, Not to get churchy on you, but the Bible says God will give seed to the sower. When you make a decision and when you make a decision, the way will present itself. God will put things in your path to keep you going, and that's what was happening. I was doing all kind of hustles. Hey, still would iron my shirts. I would microwave my water. My gas was cut off. I would microwave my water. I would get in my bathtub and I would be talking to myself, telling myself my quotes and doing all that. I have pictures of like how I got on my wall right now, with what it was like when I didn't have no lights, I didn't have no gas. And I'd be reading all those every single day, putting my certain tie on, going and doing work, going to teach these kids martial arts, doing whatever. I had a letter that said I'm gonna get free, and it was my resignation letter. And I would read it every day. I would brush my teeth, and doggone, in August 2011, I took it off my wall and put it into my manager and said, I'm gone. They said, you need this job. You will be back. We guarantee you'll be back. And that was in 2011. This is 2023. I ain't seen them. I ain't been back at all and ain't going.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
That's a
So,
testimony. So I,
yeah.
I hope
Yeah.
everyone is listening to
Yeah.
what anything is possible. Anything is possible
Anything.
as long as you believe in yourself. You have to believe in yourself and never give up. So
And you're
yeah,
going to struggle. The thing
yeah.
is, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle. You're going to have problems. The When I started Camp Warrior King, right? So you be like, okay, he done got off the job, everything is cool, right? He done no. When I started Camp Warrior King, I was teaching martial arts during the school year. During the summertime, the money would dry up. It's like, okay, so now they need this personal development. I also need to make some money. So
Mhm,
I got two problems. How do I solve these problems? The way you make money is by being a problem solver. That is how
mhm,
you become wealthy. You solve problems, you solve enough of them, you will become wealthy. So I said, okay, somebody gave me the idea. I started we did a 1 week spring camp for martial arts. We turned that into, I said, okay, they said they liked it. They said, well, you do one for the summer. I said, sure, I'll do a week. So I didn't want to really be fooling around working with no kids, no way. They said, no, we don't want to come to a camp for a week. We want you to do it for the whole summer. I ain't work with no kids. I ain't know how to do it. But when you make a decision, the way will present itself. I had three guys that I would teach martial arts at a school, It was three guys. I was like, yo, we work with kids. We know how to do it. We'll come. My mother had left her cleaning business and became a teacher. So she set up the curriculum for the summer camp. So I had everything I needed. My sister came and started managing the front so we could work. The first year, I was in the red. I had lost all my money. I owed everybody else money. It took me 3 months to pay the people back the money that I owed them. Only people that had got paid was the church that they let us rent it out of. I was getting ready to get evicted out of my house. I had a baby on the way. And I told the landlord, I said, man, look, if you would just let me paint. My father taught me how to paint at like 8, 9 years old. I knew how to paint. I said, this apartment, it was a 6.
Uh-oh. See it. Can you hear him?
No, it froze a
Sean,
little bit.
Sean. He broke up. Uh-oh.
Probably trying to come back in.
Okay, we have a technical difficulty. We'll keep talking.
Uh-oh.
Sean, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. There we go.
Okay. There we go.
I'm not sure what happened.
You bleeped out. It's like you froze up. Everything froze up.
Oh, man. Well, I tell you what, man, the long or the short of it is that anything you want is possible. I don't want to talk y'all's ear off. I just get excited when I think about, being able to help other people and what's good, man. Yeah.
It's a good feeling. It's
Yeah.
You better come on, tired of selling insurance.
Yeah, right. Look,
Ooh,
I got
today.
We are almost at time, and I'm geeking to ask these two things really quick because I know we're almost
Let's
at
do
time.
it. Let's do
First,
it.
I want to know: did anyone ever write your aunt's husband that took her life, and did he confess? And then, second, if you can give the women that are going through domestic violence, some advice, why they should leave, maybe two things of why they should leave because of what you experienced. Um, that'd be blessed.
Okay. So, yes, he confessed. He confessed. The court case was very short because he confessed to doing it. Um, so that was it. Nobody ever wrote him from our family, not that I know of. I mean, our attitude was, man, let him rot. And that was just something where we had to work on. I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, we had to forgive him, but it's like, yeah, whatever, man. Like, ain't nobody trying to forgive you for that, bro. You know what I mean? You was wrong for it. You know you was wrong for it, so rot. And uh, somewhere in there, there's forgiveness for it. I mean, he's dead now, so you can't, be mad. He gone, but uh, now nobody I know wrote him. But he confessed to doing it, and so the court case was very short. I mean, he had told me, and because of my age, they didn't require me to have to come to court. So that was great because they just didn't want any more trauma than I had already experienced, or my sister or my cousins. So we didn't have to go to say that, yeah, he had called and all that. He just was like, yeah, I called and I did this and I told them and this is how they found me and all that. Um, any advice for women dealing with that? I'm very cautious um, to give any kind of advice to women in those situations because a lot of times they already know. A lot of times women already know they know they should leave. Yeah, they know it's wrong. Yeah, they know, right? Sometimes, right? And you got the other situations where women think it's all their fault. And so it's a very challenging thing to say. But what I would say, if anything, is if you have children, is do it for your children. If you have children and you are in a domestic violence situation, do it for your children. Um, if you can't do it for yourself, right? Because a lot of times, women, they're a lot stronger than men are. We see that just time and time again. History's proven it. Men, we're not, especially when we're emotionally unstable. The worst kind of man is an emotionally unstable man. But you do it for your children so that they have a future, because there's a couple of things, right? Children, right? It's like monkey see, monkey do. Children model, right? Children aren't paying attention to as much of what you say as what it is they see you doing. And so if your daughter is sitting watching you get beat by a man then the chances of her allowing another man to beat her is extremely high. And so when you think about, would you want your daughter to be getting beat by a man? The obvious answer is no. Then don't allow your daughter to see you getting beat.
Somehow he kicked out.
Yeah, I don't know.
I
What
hope he comes back.
saying.
Yeah. Oops. I'm trying. Here he come. Here he come. Now he's sideways. Now your picture's I just told Sid, I said, oh, Sean, come back.
Yeah, I'm right here. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I'm in my.
We
I
are
guess
I mean,
you got
we
all.
almost there.
you got
We
sick
Yeah,
and
almost
all
there.
the.
tired of being
Yeah,
Sid.
yeah. Nah, man. All the bars is on. I don't know what happened. I guess they don't want us to get this message out to them. But
We
hey,
gonna get it
do it.
out.
Do it for your kids. That's all. I mean, it's do it for your children, right? It's do it for your children. Would be the advice that I would give, just because you can stop the cycle of violence that your children can experience or what they may do to other people. It could possibly change. The chances are much greater that it will change if you leave, and it is better to leave and to struggle and not know how you're gonna survive and sleep in a car if you have to. And I mean, me and my mom, we was homeless when we moved down to Atlanta. A lady named Miss Mayweather saved my mother and I. I mean, it's better to go through that and deal with those struggles than it is to deal in a situation where you could lose your life or your children's life or lose your children.
And that's what
Absolutely.
I'm glad you displayed that point because I tell folks all the time the kids we think that we're in love or we go through it, but the kids end up getting more traumatized than anyone. Just watch.
Much more,
Yeah.
much more, much
Mhm.
more.
So we are pretty much at time, Sean. But what I'd like to do is our normal segment at the end, shameless plug. So we have all of your information scrolling down at the bottom. If you could
Yeah,
let the viewers know, for one, if they want to send children to your camp, how they can reach you
yeah.
there,
Hmm.
websites to communicate you for anything that you offer, or any projects that you have going up that you need foot traffic for, this is your
Yeah.
time.
Okay, for sure. Well, if you're in the Atlanta area, check out Camp Warrior King. You go to campwarriorking.com. It's the funnest camp around. We'll have a ball. Um, check out the reviews. Check out the parent testimonials on the website. You'll see how we get down. All those pictures are not stock photos. Those are all our kids. Every single picture on there, the kids you see on that website, you'll see running around camp, jumping off of something, or having a water gun fight, or doing something wild and crazy. So check out Camp Warrior King. For anybody else around the country or around the world, you want to get connected, you want your kids connected to great personal development with the fastest growing youth development magazine in the world, then go to You Can Have It All. Go to youkids.world. It's a website for that, youkids.world, to get them connected to the magazine. To get connected with me and any of my personal development endeavors, you can go to gosfb.com and you can connect with me right there.
Okay, wonderful. Well, Sean, you hold 1 second. We're gonna close it out. So I want
Yeah,
to thank you for being a guest on Unfiltered Unspoken podcast.
thank you.
And like we said, we hope your testimony touches someone that is going through a similar situation. So it was a
Most
definitely
important.
an honor having you.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I had a ball, like for real, for real. Thank you.
Thank you. So,
Yeah,
thank you for tuning into Unfiltered Unspoken. We're going to continue to share life experiences of others to help others going through similar situations in hopes that you will start the journey to healing. Tom, um, sorry, um, oh, I apologize. Sean made a lot of valid points on his traumas that he went through. He wasn't directly, but all of the traumas around him, from domestic violence to bullying to gang, dodging bullets. I mean, everyone said he would be dead or locked up, but he's a testimony how you can change your life through going through the poverty and the hood and the situations. So you continue to fight, fight, fight. And again, please reach out to Sean. I checked his website out. He has some very informative information on there. So don't be scared. And if you're in the Atlanta area, please reach out, contact him. And if you need any information, please contact Unfiltered Unspoken, we will definitely connect you with Shaun and share information. So, again, females, if you're in a domestic situation, please think about your child. If you do anything, if your way out, please think about your child. And we want to thank you for tuning in to Unfiltered Unspoken Podcast. And we will be back because we are going to continue to share as many life experiences as we can.